Hello and welcome to the News Minute. I'm Dhanya Rajendran. Today, a five-judge bench of the Supreme Court gave its judgment, in fact, four different judgments on marriage equality petitions. Joining me is lawyer Arvind Narrian from Bengaluru to explain to us what the judgments were. Now, Arvind, what are your first thoughts about what the CJI said and then the rest of the judges?
The CGI, in a sense, set the frame of the way you view the entire four judgments, because the point that he indicated is there's points of difference between all of us, but also points of commonality between all of us. And the commonality, difference, commonality is with respect to the fact that we are all for respecting the rights of the LGBTQ community, but the difference is to what extent we might go as far as the recognizing the rights of the community is concerned. So uh, that's the that's one initial thought I had on the Chief Justice's initial opening remark. But from there, the Chief Justice goes on to lay out really a broader framework of rights as far as the LGBTQ community is concerned. He very explicit, and all the judges are explicit on this. They're very explicit in recognizing the fact that the Special Marriage Act is something which they cannot give a particular relief to the queer community under. But the Chief Justice's compromise formula, if you will, is to say that he recognizing that under the constitutional framework, we have the right to form unions. And if you have the right to form unions, you also have certain associated rights with that, including insurance, benefits, income tax, etc. And his entire point is, as far as those rights are concerned, we'll constitute a committee which can examine the details of taking these rights forward. The other point, I think, where the Chief Justice is explicit, is saying that this is not an elite issue, it's not an urban issue. It applies to people, to communities, LGBTQ communities around in the diversity, in all that diversity. And the last point which he makes, two other very important points he makes actually. The point which he makes is that the right to marry of the transgender community has to be recognized unambiguously. That's again a very, very important judicial recognition of an already existing right. So it's very, but it's nonetheless it's very, very important. And the final point is marriage is often the end point of a range of struggles, but the range of struggles which fall below the ken of marriage. And one of that is really this: that two people in love who run away, who were picked up or harassed by the police, harassed by the families, harassed by communities, and Chief Justice is very clear in the directions he's laid down. Again, this is something which runs across all the judgments. They're all very clear that there must be no discrimination, or the police must ensure you guarantee protection as far as the couples who run away, queer couples who run away are concerned. So, for all these reasons, I think the Chief Justice's judgment is a very important starting point in this discussion.
Arvind, but there are three judges who did not agree with the Chief Justice on many of the things that he said. So, what would your takeaways be as to what are the precedents that the judgments are setting and what was disappointing? Because they did stop short of saying that marriage equality can be allowed. They have instead passed the buck on to the parliament now.
Yeah, the I think I'll remove the mic. Yeah. The You're right about the fact that the Chief Justice was joined by Justice Call on many of the points, but the three other judges do not agree with the Chief Justice on many of his formulations. But again, the point being that there's some level of commonality, some areas of difference. Commonalities with respect to the broad nature of rights that LGBTQ people enjoy. The differences on the entire question of recognition of relationships of union, and the question of recognition of the rights on adoption. That's the area of difference, as it were. And I think if you go back again to why we're not, if you look at the language of the dissenting judges as well, why we're not hurt or upset or angry with the judgments of the other three judges, is this is not a Kaushal kind of a moment where the judges use disparaging language as far as the LGBTQ community is concerned. The judges are clear that the reason we can't do this is because of their own interpretation of what is possible within the framework of law and what is also possible within the framework of the Constitution. And if you read Justice Butt, who's the most articulate exponent of this particular viewpoint, his viewpoint is this: that when it comes to the entire question of recognition of rights of marriage, even if it's a form of union, you have to you're in effect establishing a de facto relationship, a de facto obligations, which means a range of uh, possibilities come in, range of eventualities come in, which can only be dealt with by a legislature. It can never be dealt with by the courts. That's his opinion. So the disagreement is on a technical point between the Chief Justice and Justice Butt. So where that leaves us is this. Where that leaves us is saying that as far as the future direction of the LGBTQ movement is concerned, we have to reorient our struggles from a battle with the judiciary to a wider battle as far as the wider political process is concerned. As my colleague Akai Padmashali raised just now, her point is this, that we must have LGBTQ representation in parliament. We must be able to raise these issues in the wider political sphere. That's the direction in which this judgment is nudging us towards.
So what Arvind is saying is that the battle now moves on from the courts to the parliament where the laws to be framed. Arvind, I have two quick questions for you. One is that with regard to adoption, the CGI has said that adoption can be allowed for unmarried and queer couples, but the judges dissented. So where does that stand now? Does that mean that basically the CGI's judgment will not stand because there are three dissenting judges? My second is, how hopeful are we that the parliament will formulate such laws, considering this government has made it stand very clear in court?
Yeah. We'll start with your second question first, with the question of how hopeful are we? Uh, See, the again, to you trace it back, when the first response of the Union of India, when the arguments began in court, was to say it's a matter which Parliament should decide, that we should have no role whatsoever, and that this matter should not be heard at all. That was the first response. Second response in the affidavit was say it's an elite issue. It's only the couple of elite urban lesbian and gay people who are concerned. Vast majority of people don't care. But the third response, which is the response which all the judges refer to, is the constitution of a committee to examine rights which can be granted short of relationship recognition and short of marriage. So the government has shown an ability to change in response to the pressure put by the court. So we hope that we can augment that with pressure from the LGBTQ community itself, using really very empowering, very powerful recognition which the court has already given us, and take this kind of a battle uh, forward. Sorry, can you just repeat your first question again?
It was about adoption, what the CGI
Ah,
said, and the three
yes.
dissenting judges.
Yeah, yeah. The adoption again, it's a fairly straightforward technical question you're asking. Again, see, the Chief Justice has used a very interesting route in taking his argument forward. He's taken the viewpoint, of course, that okay, fine, we don't have marriage. Okay, fine, we don't have legal recognition of a particular union, but we do have something called Juvenile Justice Act, which allows for adoption to happen. So the Chief Justice's point is the rules with respect to adoption must allow for unmarried persons to adopt as well. And he strikes down the rule which prohibits unmarried couples from adopting. And again, the way he frames it is that though the rule itself is framed as a rule about unmarried couples, it has a disproportionate impact as far as queer couples are concerned, because all queer couples can only be unmarried couples as far as the law is concerned. So his argument is this should be struck down. So it's a very interesting route he arrives to arrive at that particular conclusion. But you're right, the Chief Justice stands in solitary isolation as far as this particular reasoning is concerned, apart from Justice Call, with the three other judges not agreeing with his particular interpretation of the entire regulations on adoption. Again, with the way we see this, will have to be a battle for the future. Again, going back to the language of what do you mean? It's that in this case, the Chief Justice will be articulating a dissenting opinion. I want to take you back to actually the dissenting opinion in ADM Jabalpur by Justice Khanna. He puts it this way: he says, a dissent in a court of last appeal is the appeal to the intelligence of a future day. So that's the way we have to see it. We see the Chief Justice's opinion as really being the appeal to the intelligence of a future day, and saying again, this is a point telling us that we have to go back, we have to fight this battle and ensure that we get this recognition. And the opinion of Chief Justice becomes at some point the opinion of the majority of the court.
So that's Arvind explaining that what the Chief Justice said is actually the dissenting opinion here. My final question to you, Arvind, is a couple of people I spoke to immediately after the judgment came said that one silver lining is that the Chief Justice has unequivocally, and other judges too, has said that trans persons have the right to marry. This is something which the Madras High Court had already said previously. But how can what the Supreme Court said today actually help trans persons in the country?
Yeah, I think that's a fair interpretation. A lot of people I can imagine will be saying that, end of the day, what all the judges are saying is something which is already recognized by a range of other courts around the country. And you're completely right. The Madras High Court has made a range of progressive observations with respect to the rights of transgender people already. But then the Madras High Court is the Madras High Court, with all due respect to it, and the Supreme Court is the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, with what it lays down and Article 141 is the law of the land. And the law of the land will apply with respect to every court as far as this country is concerned. So the fact that the Supreme Court is saying that makes a great deal of difference. So we heartily welcome this question of the recognition of the rights of transgender people. And I think my interpretation then is a little different. I don't think there's one silver lining. I see there's many streaks of light in this judgment, right? And there are a couple of points which we say we have to work further on, but there are many ways in which I think it's telling us, the judgment is telling us that the work we need to do. Judgment is telling us that you need to build a movement on the ground. That's what it's telling us. It's saying that you can't go entirely through the court-led process alone. So I think a range of learnings really for us from this judgment itself.
In fact, Arvind, I was telling one of my friends who works in the social sector that we should actually frame the guidelines for the police with the CGI actually laid out and go frame it in put it in every police station, because we, as a journalist, as a lawyer, we hear so many cases, right, every single day of people being dragged, consenting adults being dragged to police stations. So, do you think those guidelines also will definitely pave the way? Pave the way better?
Yeah, in fact, Danya, actually, one of the critiques, right, of when you filed when the marriage petition was filed, would have been, oh, it's only a couple of people who are interested in getting married. Large majority of people get harassed, beaten up, discriminated against, and nobody cares about them. But actually, the judgment, in a strange sense, goes back to that point. It says we're going to deal with all of these other issues. We may not be able to deal with marriage, but dealing with all of those other issues. So you're completely right. Using the guidelines laid down by the court in such extensive detail, the Chief Justice laid down the guidelines in such extensive detail, if those guidelines are now passed by DGPs in different states, saying these are the instructions we're giving to every police station, that'll be a fantastic difference it'll make in the way queer people are dealt with at the level of the police station. So again, you're right. I think actually it's a very, very positive and very, very incredibly important development for the vast majority of people who may never get married, but who face the level of violence and harassment by their family, by society, in employment, in a range of other places. Again, I think if I remember, I don't quite remember which of the judges made a strong point on the entire question of discrimination. Justice Call, he referred very greatly to the question of discrimination and how discrimination should be addressed. Again, that's a core issue as far as the community is concerned. So actually, you read the judgment from the perspective of the vast spectrum of the LGBTQ community, you'll find more and more things in it to welcome. And I'm still to read it fully. I'm telling you based on what I've heard till now, but I'm convinced that we'll find more parts of the judgment which will be incredibly useful in taking a battle and a struggle forward.
Thank you, Arvind, for
Yeah.
those
Thank you.
thoughts.
Thank you.
We'll come
Thank you.
back to you later when the judgments are out and we all read it properly and then see
Yeah.
what can be
Yeah.
done. Thank you so much.
I think that's an important point to do. I'll do that. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
thank
you,
you.
Danya. Thank you.
Joining me is my colleague Azifa, who has been covering this issue for some time. She, in fact, would judiciously log in every day to listen to what the Supreme Court was, what arguments were panning out in the Supreme Court. Remember, the court heard this case for 10 days. It was a marathon hearing for 10 days where where different petitioners came. Azifa, what are your first thoughts? Like Arvind said, you agree that there are some good things, some bad things, but the fight has to go on.
Yes, Danya. This hearing that went for 10 long days made some very important observations for us. Specifically, some observations made by the Chief Justice himself was very widely publicized. But right now, As Arvind pointed out, while the right to marriage has not been explicitly granted, there are some directions that were passed which are going to be helpful in the longer run, especially about establishing hotline and safe houses for queer couples, which are some very effective measures on the ground.
I'm just going to ask our colleague Shivani also to come. But I think the reactions have been mixed, right, Azifa? What have the reactions been from various groups, individuals who have been fighting? I spoke to lawyer Jaina Kothari. She was saying that the judgment, which the CJI is saying that trans persons have the right to marry, is an important observation or part of the judgment. Arvind, in fact, agrees with that, saying that yes, people may think that the right is already granted, but it was only by the Madras High Court, and the jurisdiction of the Madras High Court is not as a Supreme Court.
Yes, exactly. Right now, while the right for trans persons is explicitly granted in a heterosexual union, still there is a question of what happens to same-sex union. It is only granted for heterosexual union, but the reaction from the petitioners who are fighting for legalization of same-sex marriages are disheartened, to be honest, because they've been expecting some sort of positive outcome from the judgment, but which was not received right now.
Shivani, you are at the Alternate Law Forum in Bengaluru. There was a press meet immediately after the judgment came. Akai, who has been a very vocal person and one of the litigants, what was her reaction?
Hi. So Akai has welcomed the verdict of the Supreme Court, but she also has a few demands for the Parliament and the parliamentarians. So one of the demands is that she wants the inclusion of LGBTQI community members in the committee to take their suggestions very seriously. But she also urges the Prime Minister and the other parliamentarians to include the community members while making the laws. And also she wants a kind of a political movement to be started now that we have a verdict here, and now that the court has said that the parliament has to take it forward, form a committee. Akai feels that there should be a political movement, political parties have to be involved, and they should involve the community members in making laws and etc.
Azifa, one point that I wanted to touch upon is you listen to all the judgments being read out, the four judgments. What Arvind also noted is the language, right? Even those judges who did not agree with the CJI were very welcoming of the fact that yes, the rights of queer persons have to be recognized. They have the right to cohabit. They stop short of saying that they have the right to marry. Marriage is a fundamental right. But isn't it encouraging in one way that the language adopted by all the judges is the same?
Yes, it is very encouraging given that we have seen certain other judgments and court observations made in which the language was very disparaging and discriminatory in a way. But in this judgment, when we see there was not even a few instances of mispronouncing a word or saying it in a wrong way, because we can also remember that there were petitioners councils who gave the glossary, one of the glossaries, TNM Inclusive Newsrooms glossary was given to the Supreme Court, as well as a few other reference materials also. So going through this, hearing this judgment, I was able to understand that they've in fact actually gone through the glossary and the words were properly used as compared to the previous hearings also, which is very welcoming in a way.
Okay. My final question, Shivani, I'll wrap it up. What is the sense that you're getting sitting there at ALF? A lot of petitioners, there are lawyers there. What is the sense that you're getting from how everybody's looking at the judgment?
So everybody has been welcoming of the judgment. They do believe that this is a step forward from what we have been seeing from the beginning of the hearings, which was in April. Like Arvind initially mentioned, how the first hearing was more of they talked about how this was an urban elitist concept to where the SG even suggested that they will form a committee, and how the Supreme Court took that, and now they have decided to decided to give it to the parliament and form a committee. So the people here, the lawyers and the activists who have been advocating for marriage equality, have welcomed this, and they do think that they're like, this is a step forward. And about adoptions and things that the CGI mentioned, they do think that these things can be brought up again, again in front of the court or any other ways in front of the parliament.
Well, I guess there is disappointment, but everybody is choosing to see how this is a step forward. I just want to end by saying that thank you, Shivani and Azifa, for following this whole the battle in the court, and we will keep doing it. One very important thing to remember is that the Supreme Court has categorically said no conversion therapies. So, for any hospitals, centers, etc., still doing conversion therapies, journalists, lawyers, activists are watching out from now. And I hope there'll be more reporting up as to how this illegal activity still continues across country and especially in the state of Kerala. Thank you very much, Shivani and Azifa. We will keep coming back. Thank you.